Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat at malugod na pagbati mula sa Future Earth Philippines. Welcome po sa ika-125th episode ng the Filipino SDG Action Hour at muli nyo kaming samahan sa isa't kalahating oras ng hitik na impormasyon at mga bagong kaalaman. So ngayong hapon po pag-uusapan po natin ang topic na pinamagatang Safe Food, Sustainable Future, Strengthening Philippine Food Safety in the Era of the SDG. So, paano nga po ba mapapalakas ng food safety ang ating direksyon sa isang sustainable at matatag na Pilipinas? So, today we will be joined by a seasoned food safety and regulatory expert with over a decade of experience at the Food and Drug Administration Philippines. A registered nutritionist, dietitian, and cum laude graduate of UP Los Baños, he currently serves as OIC of the Food Safety and Quality Division. He has led the development of national food safety system like the Philippine Rapid Alert System and EPMS. He authored FDA circulars, joined international missions, and represented the country in ASEAN and WHO initiatives. And as a resource speaker, he shares expertise on food fraud, recalls, and the Food Safety Act of 2013. So his work bridges science and policy, strengthens interagency collaboration, and advances national food safety responsiveness and standards. So this afternoon po, let's all welcome Mr. Timothy Moises Cole Mendoza.
Hello, maraming salamat po, Sir Mark, for that kind introduction. Naririnig po ba ako?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay.
Sir, just give me the go signal if ready na po tayo mag-share ng screen.
Sige po, you could share the screen po.
So sa ating po mga viewers, paki-heart or thumbs up po if nakikita po ang ating screen. Yan po. Sige, lalakihan ko na po ang ating...
Okay. First of all, I would like to send my utmost appreciation for the invitation that was sent to me by Future Earth Philippines to be a resource person this afternoon to share something about food safety. And I know that ang atin pong mga participants are SDG advocates and has been doing activities or advocacy related to SDGs. But this afternoon, um, let me provide perhaps a different angle on SDG. And this will focus on food safety and what is our as food safety regulatory agencies from the national government agencies of the Philippines, what are we doing to strengthen our Philippine food safety objectives
Po.
that we have for this afternoon? Next slide po. Yeah. This is the outline. So first we have the objectives, the food safety and the SDGs. What is the regulatory landscape in the Philippines? The challenges and opportunities, key strategic recommendations and way forward, and of course, the question and answer portion. Next slide, please. We have three main objectives for the presentation. First is to set out linkages between food safety and the SDGs. Next is to provide the overview of food safety regulatory framework in the Philippines and current activities being implemented. And the last objective is to recommend some multi-sectoral interventions that we could do. So first of all, we just have to level off what is the definition of food safety. So I know everyone, it's a little bit self-explanatory what is food safety, but let me just define it in accordance with what is stated in the law. Next slide. So food safety is referring to freedom of food from anything that might cause harm or injury for those who might consume it. And kung titignan po natin ang definition na to, no, we are looking at two operational words here, harm or injury. So harm or injury both affects the physical being of an individual in terms of health and in terms of physical health and mental health. Next. And by having the definition of food safety, another one consistently in the presentation is the foodborne diseases. So these are illnesses that are caused by contaminated or naturally harmful food or drink. So in the absence of food safety, we are expected to have foodborne diseases. When ingestion of food safety hazards, so we have three main groups. So physical, so example of these are fragments of objects, chemical, heavy metal and pesticides, and microbiological. So we have the virus, bacteria, parasites. So it must be noted as well that many of our foodborne diseases are zoonotic. So meaning they pass on from animal sources to human groups. And we have emerging diseases and they have the potential to cause pandemics. So next slide is the WHO or the World Health Organization conducted a study and resulted to the following. There are 31 foodborne hazards that were considered in that study. And uh, in that study, there are an estimated of 600 million foodborne diseases causing 420,000 deaths. So it cost 600 million individuals to be affected by FBDs. And among these 420,000 were unfortunately led to death. And when we are looking at the global burden, we have this terminology, which is the disability adjusted life years. So this means that one DALY or DALY corresponds to one lost year of healthy life. So according to the study, 33 million DALY was recorded. So 33 million hours of healthy life. And the most affected in the study is under the group of children 5 years old and below. And if we are looking at the global population, this comprises only of 9%, but they bore 40% of the burden. So we are looking at this very vulnerable age group. So developmental age of 5 years and below, very, very crucial. So, and LMIC, so the low middle income countries. And 97% were due to biohazards such as bacteria, viruses, and parasites. Next slide, please. So now we are looking at this next section, and we are going to look at food safety and FBD in relation to specific SDGs. We will first identify in the succeeding slides, first identify how safe food can directly contribute to the attainment of the goal and providing causal links and looking at and considering how safety might correlate or be linked to other factors that are needed for the goal or how the attaining of the goal might contribute to improve food safety. So providing some bi-directional relations. And finally, we examine how concerns over food safety have implications for attaining the goal or the unintended consequences. So next slide, please. SDG number 3. So good health and well-being. So the causal link of food safety with the SDG 3 is uh, the occurrence of FBDs or the foodborne diseases from countries. And according to Havilar conducted study, actually foodborne diseases is comparable to malaria, HIV/AIDS, and tuberculosis in terms of the health burden economically as well. However, it is not yet that highlighted if we are going to look at SDGs. Food safety is not that highlighted, but according to the study, it our in well individuals have FB and some even have in a when they are in a day-to-day basis salarymen or women, they wouldn't be able to go to work, so it is. And looking at the next one, foodborne diseases are more prevalent in LMICs than in high-income nations, potentially rising due to increased demand for high-risk foods and inadequately regulated agri-food system transformations. So we are seeing this correlation wherein when you are in the low middle income country, you tend to have more occurrence of foodborne diseases. So most likely due to poor sanitation, hygiene, and the infrastructures that are there to prevent. So, example of which across the supply chain. So, do we have enough cold chain facilities, for example, to maintain the not only the quality but the safety as well of our agri products and so on and so forth. So there we are seeing a direct relation. Next is as well in the absence of um, good practices. So, for example, good agricultural practices, good manufacturing practices. The agri-food sector workers are going to be exposed to more occupational hazards. So, example are pesticides or pathogens or diseases as well as associated with these, like zoonosis and exposure to microorganisms that are are already showing resistance to antimicrobials. So next slide, please. Now we are going to look at some bidirectional points in this SDG relative to food safety. So that FBD as a risk factor for stunting and malnutrition and vice versa. So as a nutritionist, we are wary of stunted children because this is an indicative of chronic malnutrition. So this means that a certain age, a child is not at par with what is the average or the expected height, minimum height that one child must be achieving at that specific age. So it shows chronic malnutrition, protein energy malnutrition, and even micronutrient malnutrition. So when we are going to correlate FBDs and food safety relative to malnutrition, we are looking at stunted children are more vulnerable to FBD. And at the same time, when you are malnourished, you have stunted children, the vulnerability to have uh, when well when you have FBDs, you are also increasing the risk of being malnourished. So the number one foodborne disease that we have seen, or the WHO have seen, and the healthcare sector has seen, is diarrhea. So when you have chronic diarrhea because of foodborne diseases or eating contaminated food, you have higher risk of really flushing out those essential nutrients needed for the developmental years and crucial for children especially. So we are also looking at immunocompromised infants, elderly and pregnant women, which are susceptible and vulnerable to FPTs. And because of their vulnerability, they have and vulnerability to FBDs that could also lead to um, having malnutrition problems down the line. So another one is FBDs may lead to reduced vaccine effectiveness, especially those oral ones, which may increase susceptibility to FBD. So we have oral vaccines that prevents um, actually FBDs, diarrhea, so specifically for rotavirus and typhoid. And some of these are oral, so has a bidirectional relationship wherein if you have FBD and you take oral vaccine, you flush it out immediately and reduce the effectivity of that vaccine. So you are lessening the protection as well. By you're not solving actually the intended purpose of the consumption or intake of that oral vaccine. And another interesting point is that the highly nutritious foods that we should be consuming. So these are primarily from animal sources and fresh fruits and veggies. These are also actually the riskiest in terms of being sources of FBD. So there's a two-way relationship here that the nutritious foods that you are consuming are also high risk foods, and that's why food safety must be in play because you need to intake those, and without food safety you are consuming still high risk food products. Next slide, please. So what are the unintended consequences? So FBD concerns, or example, residues and chemicals, they often drive increased consumption of local organic or certified foods. So we have been seeing this from the past decades that when we are looking at, when we are highlighting issues about um, residues, pesticides, chemicals, antibiotics, that spurs trend uptrend in consuming organic foods. However, it has an effect as well on social health and environmental. By prioritizing these food groups, there might be uh, a reduction in the demand for the non-organic ones. So in that balance of demand, supply and demand, so there might be a reduction in overall food production. So this might potentially impact nutrition down the line. So uh, and another facet is if you have FBD concerns as well, like for example, during times of emergencies, wherein fresh foods is scarce, you tend to increase consumption of processed and prepackaged foods. So this in turn could negatively impact nutrition because you are um, consuming uh, primarily highly processed and prepackaged foods, which are lower in nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and this could contribute to non-communicable diseases, and uh, because you are prioritizing the processed one. So this is actually two polar unintended consequences, and this is actually about the perception of individuals depending on the issue that we are encountering from time to time. So very seasonal. So seasonal po ito. So meron din tayong na encounter din na balita about processed meat na linabas ni WHO about its potential for leading to carcinogen. So bumaba yung ano natin for processed meat, but na to prioritize fresh, no unprocessed. So meron din naman kapag mga calamities. Yeah. Next slide, please. So now we look at some SDGs where food safety has significant influence on attaining goals. So the first one is clean water and sanitation. So we have seen a causal link. Many infectious foodborne diseases are waterborne. So with infected humans or animals contaminating water sources. So thereby compromising food safety. So example of this are cryptosporidiosis, giardiasis, toxoplasmosis, and they can spread through contaminated drinking water. Next slide, please. And for bidirectional relations, so the lack of access to clean water increase the risk for FPDs, wherein this, when you have lots of FBDs, there is an increased demand for clean water and hygienic practices. So this is sort of two-way. And in food production and processing, this actually requires large quantity of water and may reduce allocation of water for other uses such as sanitation and drinking. So we have been seeing this that uh, huge processing facilities really require a lot of fresh, clean water to maintain the standards, the proper manufacturing practices. So thereby, in it might lead to lower allocation of water for uh, other uses, especially on household ones. And next is there are water sources that are naturally our natural habitat for pathogens and vector, such schistosomes. This is from snails, wherein the presence may limit use for drinking, irrigation, or hygienic use. Next slide, please. So another one is food production, example of which is in livestock and aquaculture and processing can pollute water sources, leading to lack of clean water. And from agriculture and aquaculture, wastewater supports. It can be supported by sorry, wastewater supports agriculture, and agriculture shapes wastewater reuse and treatment practices. So wastewater is very nutritious for our um, plants, but as well, before use for agriculture use, there needs to be some treatments to be done first, so as pathogenic microorganisms will not be passed for agri-crops. And that highlights good agricultural practices. They could protect water quality if well managed. So we are looking at agroforestry along riverbanks so they could prevent erosion and reducing contamination, especially if along the riverbanks you have pasture lands. Next slide, please. So now we go to another SDG on number one, which is in highlighting the no poverty goal. So one of the causal um, effect of food safety in influencing in attaining this goal is that when you have poor health, it is a major factor in causing and maintaining poverty, especially for LMIC. So illnesses actually reduce economic productivity. So as we have shown a while ago regarding the WHO statistics on uh, the daily DALI, wherein one healthy year is lost, or in the global statistics, 33 million healthy life years is lost. So this is a lost year of being productive, contributing to the economy, and saving actually money for other important economic activities. So FBDs also impose significant economic burdens on poor, reinforcing cycles of poverty. So healthcare costs, when you as well produce unsafe food, these are unsellable, and the government has some regulation on protecting the public for unsafe food. So they will not be marketed and they will not reach our retail sector. So another one is that zoonotic diseases, when are not controlled, they may lead to livestock losses. So we have seen this over the past several years. We have HPAI, a highly pathogenic avian influenza, leading to culling of millions, if not uh, tens of millions of heads of poultry in our farms, so leads to economic losses. So food safety is the food safety principles are there actually to prevent, supposed to be, these types of occurrences. Next. So some bidirectional points we have seen. Poverty limits access to safe food and infrastructure. So this leads to the our economic status. For example, LMIC have limited access to safe food and infrastructure, thereby leading to FBD. So it's another two-way. And many FBD are zoonotic diseases, and the burden of zoonotic diseases is also much higher in developing countries. So another interesting one is wealth influences FBD patterns, but FBDs also influence economic outcomes. So creating a feedback loop where food safety becomes both a consequence and a determinant of development. So um, we have looked at some statistics on this, and when we are looking at higher income countries, they tend to have lower occurrences of health illnesses in general. But looking at FBDs, more or less the same because of different occurrences. So, example, when we are looking at the higher income countries, the cost of FBDs are different from the low middle income countries, where bacterial contamination is more prevalent. But in the higher income, we are looking at chemical contamination, and probably because as well of higher levels of detection in those higher income countries. So, yes, next slide, please. So, what are the unintended consequences as well that we are seeing when we are looking at food safety and SDG number one? So, concerns over FBD lead to stricter enforcement of regulations in some markets. So specifically, if we are going to export to international sources, they might tighten some regulations when they are receiving information. For example, that a specific country has a problem or an uncontrolled problem on, uh, for example, contamination of heavy metals in agri products. So they may, in principle, uh, um, enforce some stricter regulations, and that will affect, of course, the cost of compliance for our exporters. Because additional tests are conducted, additional processing are done, and this higher cost of compliance might lead to lost economic opportunities when they are not complied with. And we are looking at as well at exclusion of the poor, which have limited resources, and in making safer foods. And this could be a barrier for them to have more potential markets to sell their products with. So another one is concerns over FBD may lead to reduced income. Yes, through unintended exclusion of small actors through governmental regulation. So we've been seeing this, that when small players, MSMEs, for example, are not yet at par with governmental regulations on food safety, they are they have limited opportunities on market access. So they couldn't enter the large retailers or supermarket chains. They couldn't sell their products in wholesale, and when they send via courier system, we have been tightening a bit on that. That you could only uh, um, send via courier system registered products, for example. So that might lead to exclusion. And on some cases, this will necessitate, you know, unfortunately, of corrupt activities, so such as acceptance of bribe. So hopefully not, but this is a this is a sad reality that we are having. Next slide, please. So next is zero hunger. So as we all know, zero hunger is not only about the physiological hunger. There is also a component of hidden hunger. So for us nutritionists, we are looking at hidden hunger as well, which is another term for malnutrition, specifically micronutrient malnutrition. So we are looking at the causal link of food safety as a fundamental component of food security. So when we have unsafe food in the market, they will be recalled or pulled out from the market, and some cases destroyed, so resulting in reduced food availability and accessibility, so lowering the supply, thereby increasing the prices and so forth. So creating some um, uh, sometimes significant effect on the overall quantity of that specific commodity. So yes, next slide, please. Their bidirectional relation. So FBDs has multiple interactions with with nutrition. So we could see the illnesses. When you have poor nutrition, you are more susceptible to FBDs. And when you have um, this FBDs as well, they worsen the nutritional status. So two-way interaction, and as well toxins that are consumed or that have residues in our food may directly lead to malnutrition. So, for example, of this is heavy metals interfering with micronutrient metabolism and damaging organs, especially our liver and kidneys. So, another one is food production leads to greater exposure to bacteria. Yes. And the most, another, as we have previously mentioned, most nutritious foods are also the most implicated in FPDs. Next slide, please. So some unintended consequences that actions to improve food safety by marking foods as unsafe may lead to increase of price and decrease the accessibility of food to poor people, which may lead to adverse nutritional consequences. So the food security component of food safety, um, or the foods that food safety affects, again, the accessibility and availability of uh, safe and nutritious foods. Next slide, please. Another one is on this following SDGs, food safety contributes to attaining the goal. Okay. So in many LMICs, agri-food systems are rapidly transforming in response to rising food demand and shifting dietary preferences. So particularly for animal sources, fresh produce, and processed items. So this global shift is providing or spurring innovation in food technology and marketing. So not only for high income countries, no, so LMICs in terms of export, when in the Philippines, for example, we are aiming for export of food products or composite products. These are foods that are combined animal plant sources when we want to export to European Union. That um, demands the Philippines to level up and innovate in food safety technologies and even regulations and policies. So it contributes to industry innovation and additional infrastructure. Next slide, please. So on responsible consumption and production. So food safety encourages actually clean production. So with the responsible use of pesticides and antibiotics, so we have GAP and GAHAP and even GMP. So we have the good agricultural practices, good animal husbandry practices, and good manufacturing practices, which encourages clean production. And there's a waste management component in this good practices. And included in as well in our regulations is in food safety and quality is providing consumer choices um, through transparent labeling in our products. So they will be well informed and educated through proper labeling and thereby leading to responsible consumption and production. So an example of this is we are putting mandatory labeling informations on nutrition information. You need to disclose what is your trans fat level, what are the fats, proteins, sugar content, and on the ingredients list, you need to disclose what are the food additives that you are using and their function, common name and function, so that consumers will be able to discern on their own uh, what they will be buying and consuming. And food safety as well enables circular economy models. So there is a safe food recovery and redistribution. So not all recalled products are deemed as unfit for human consumption. So there's a legal process of reworking this. So this is done usually for um, not for safety issues, no, for quality concerns. Instead of disposing this because of quality issues, they could be reworked and redistributed into the economy. So thereby reducing food losses if they are done or reprocessed in accordance with our regulations and good manufacturing practices. Next slide, please. I think this is the last SDG, partnerships for the goals. So we could see that food safety is an intersectoral field. So there needs to be a coordinated efforts across health, agriculture, trade, environment, and education sectors. And actually, one topic that we are actively promoting right now in the government is One Health approach. So the tripartite coordination of the animal, the human, and environmental health sector. It is addressing food safety, zoonosis, antimicrobial resistance, and even environmental health. And next is the partnerships between governments, NGOs, academia, and private industry help develop and implement integrated food safety strategies and standards. So we could see this with the international standards that we are adopting, WHO FAO Codex Alimentarius. So this is a compendium of food safety standards we are adopting. And effective food safety relies on global data exchange. So no country has a monopoly on information, and we have global data exchange means um, to further enhance uh, the inter-boundary or inter-country trade of safe food commodities and safe food products. So when we have problems or there's a country having problem with contaminated shipment of products, they could share data and other countries could as well protect their own um, markets to prevent the entry of unsafe foods. So example, so we have the WHO International Food Safety Authorities Network. Another one that we could see for partnerships for the goals is these partnerships, public-private partnerships actually help small scale producers in informal sectors meet safety standards, thereby enabling market access, so domestically and or internationally. So next slide, please. So that we now move to the regulatory landscape in the Philippines. So we have look from the past slides the linkage of SDGs and food safety. Now, what are we doing in the government in terms of food safety? So the first one is we have passed a law in 2013, August 2013, Republic Act number 10611 or Food Safety Act of 2013. And the signed IRR was issued in February 2015. So next slide, please. Okay, next. So if you can remember, I think just um, relating SDGs and food safety in the Philippines. SDGs, I think, was also um, passed or posted in the same year as the Food Safety Act of the Philippines was IRR was passed. So it is really connected when we are looking at it in the Philippine setup. So okay. So what are the objectives of the Food Safety Act of 2013? So first is for public health protection, primarily. This is of paramount interest from prevention of food and waterborne illnesses, consumption of unsanitary, unwholesome, misbranded, and adulterated food. And another component of objective of the law is to enhance industry and consumer confidence in the food regulatory system and achieve economic growth and development by promoting fair trade and sound regulatory foundation for domestic and international trade. So as we could see, this is very similar to the discussion on the linkage of food safety and SDGs. So our legal framework is very much aligned actually for complying with the SDGs. Next slide. Okay, another one. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of who are the players of or national government agencies and stakeholders involved in our food safety regulatory system. So we have the DA, DOH, DTI, DOST, DILG, LGUs, food business operators, academic and research institutions, consumers, and we have a coordinating body, which is the Food Safety Regulation Coordinating Board. So next slide, please. So the main players were the two big departments who house the food safety regulatory agencies. So we have the Department of Agriculture, which is principally responsible for the safety and quality of products in the primary production, post-harvest stages of the food supply chain, and as well the locally produced or imported products in this category. Next slide. For the Department of Health, which us in FDA is attached to. Our principal responsibility is on the safety and quality of processed and prepackaged foods and those that are locally produced or imported under this category. And also another sister agency in Department of Health responsible for the conduct of monitoring and epidemiological studies on foodborne illnesses. Next slide, please. So when we are talking about regulation, this is actually a confluence of a lot of efforts in standards, laws, rules, procedures, guidelines. So next slide. So food safety regulations are based on food laws. So we have a lot of laws related to food safety. The Food Safety Act actually is the overarching framework, and it ties all these different laws together. So we have as well code on sanitation, meat code, fisheries code, etc. So aside from the laws that we have, we are also anchoring our food safety regulations on standards. So we have our own, the Philippine National Standards. We have, as I mentioned a while ago, Codex Alimentarius. We have those on WOA, or the World Organization on Animal Health, formerly OIE, and IPPC, or the International Plant Protection Convention. So another basis is using scientific means. So in our quest for effective, efficient, and science-based regulations, we are employing risk analysis, which is a framework for estimating the chance for harm, uh, and providing a framework for managing the risk. So we have risk assessment, management, and communication. And as well, regulations uh, are also based on stakeholder engagement. So the perception, feasibility, and so forth of these regulations are very much crucial to be um, discussed with the actual stakeholders or industry that will be affected. That's why stakeholder engagement is very much crucial aspect of policy or regulation development. Next slide, please. So I just want to highlight that our regulatory landscape in the Philippines is gaining track on this one of using and actually integrating risk analysis in the framework of regulation. So according to Codex, this should be the foundational scientific principle of food safety, the use of risk analysis. So we have the risk assessment, which is science-based. You consider in the next slide 4 steps, and this interrelates with the risk management, which is primarily done by the regulators. This is policy-based. So what data is generated in the risk assessment stage is being used by risk managers, and the overarching concept of risk communication, which is the interactive exchange of information and opinion among the stakeholders. And it subsumes risk assessment and risk management, because it must happen, it must occur consistently, not at the end. During risk assessment, risk assessors and risk managers must be talking to each other and sharing data. So next slide, please. So some elaboration. So, elaboration on risk assessment. So you have 4 steps, which is hazard identification. So you conduct laboratory analysis, determine what is the hazard, and then the next step is you characterize it. What is the nature of the hazard? What are the um, inherent properties of that hazard? Then you match it with the exposure assessment. So, for example, a hazard, let's say um, aflatoxin in peanuts. So, for computing exposure assessment, what is the um, occurrence, or rather, how much does Filipinos eat per year of peanut products? So that is food consumption data. So you do an exposure assessment based on food consumption data, and then you compute that with uh, the exposure of Filipinos to aflatoxin based on laboratory analysis. Then you lead to the risk characterization. So what risk do we have? So there's low risk, medium risk, or high risk. Low exposure, but um, high doses, or is this um, low dose but high exposure in a span of time? So that those are computed and merged under the risk characterization stage. So that is the risk assessment phase. And after all of these are done in a scientific, following scientific steps, information are shared to the next step. Next slide. Under risk management, after you identify the risk, you now rank as a risk manager what are the food safety issues. So you prioritize, as we all know, there's very much there's very limited resources in our government agencies. That's why we need to really prioritize what are the food safety issues. And then after conduct of regulatory actions, regulations, enforcement, and so on and so forth, you evaluate and implement these measures. So there is an monitoring plan that is inherently done by risk managers for the evaluation of the effectivity of regulations. So you could further refine. So that's done in the monitoring and review. Next slide. And risk communication. So generally, this is intended for promoting awareness and in understanding of issues among stakeholders. And very crucial, we are seeing as food safety officers, the need for fostering trust and confidence in food safety, specifically in our regulatory activities as a government. Because when there's transparency, accountability, trust, we could receive more information that is being shared by our consumers. Thereby, we are more sensitive with what is happening on the ground, not only limited on what our inspectors are seeing. So additional set of eyes, additional set of ears, and that helps us regulators in gaining more ground when it comes to assuring food safety and quality. Next slide, please. Okay, now we go on what are the ongoing efforts of food safety regulatory agencies, LGUs, and other key stakeholders. So in terms of legal and policy framework, so since the passage of the Food Safety Act of 2013 and its IRR in 2015, we have been consistently implementing and translating these uh, provisions into policies on official controls. So um, uh, we have revised our regulation on good manufacturing practices, elevating it up to the ASEAN level of good hygienic practices. Traceability has improved, um, especially when we are looking at um, doing backtracking, investigative works. We could trace food products and their causative agents or hazards. And we have been doing emergency response activities and coordination, collaboration, and increasing of analytical testing and capacity. So expanding our capacity and capability as food safety regulatory agencies in um, doing more food safety and quality assurance in our food products. So another one is we are aligning more to national standards. We are aligning more of our national standards to international standards. So adopting Codex Alimentarius into our regulations. So example of which is updating of our outdated standards on condiments, beverages, and so on and so forth. So we now align to international standards. That alignment, actually, the benefit of it is we can export more of our products. Next is this is attributed to the clarity that the Food Safety Act provided to government agencies. There could be a clearer delineation, but at the same time, linkage of food safety mandates. And this results to clarity in enforcement of food safety regulations by respective agencies. And as well, we could integrate food safety regulations. So this is for the benefit of stakeholders. So example, we produce joint regulations, joint issuances, FDA and the Department of Agriculture. We could pursue, and actually we are pursuing memorandum of agreements in joint inspection so that um, not only for the industry to be clear, but also for the consumers to be more protected. Next slide, please. Yes, on the aspect of institutional structure and coordination, the Food Safety Act created the Food Safety Regulation Coordinating Board for harmonization of efforts. So this entity is the highest one coordinating food safety activities among different government agencies. So if you could remember the diagram that I have shown, we have the DA, DOH as the chair and co-chair, and we have representatives from DOST, DILG, DTI, and other stakeholders. So sometimes we invite academe, industry groups in the board meetings. So the thematic committees as well. We created the thematic committees in the board to focus on policy, legislations, regulations, food safety emergencies, interagency sharing of information, and education and advocacies. So there is also a constant coordination with the industry, academe, and consumers via the public consultations that we are regularly doing. So us in FDA, we are not uh, issuing any policy or regulation without undergoing public consultations. So that's actually in conformance with anti-red tape policies. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the aspect of inspection and enforcement, uh, applying risk-based activities for more efficient and scientific approach in conducting inspection on food establishments. So the risk-based activities we categorize based on the nature of the products being produced and the compliance of the management structure with food laws and regulations. Then via that computation, we could uh, provide or tag a food establishment on a specific risk. So via that risk-based scheme, we could prioritize what establishments or which establishments must be given higher manpower requirement or more time for inspecting or regular inspection activities. So another one is the initiation of food safety inspectorate certifications at par with international standards. So we are pursuing ISO 17020. So this is an ISO certification for inspection bodies. So ensure consistency and effectivity of inspection activities. So there are also conduct of joint inspection activities among FSRAs, so DA and FDA. So just earlier this week, if you have followed the news, wherein our DA and DOH secretary, along with our FDA Director General, conducted inspection activities in ports for technically smuggled products, and as well checking the safety and quality of this product. So that's why we are involving as well DOF, Bureau of Customs, in this. Next slide, please. For laboratory and analytical support, okay, for laboratory and analytical support, are constantly upgrading the competency of laboratories among FSRAs in DA, FDA, and stakeholders, DOST, and academia at par with international standards. So more laboratories have secured ISO 17025 certification among the FSRAs. So particularly in BIFAR, NMIS, BPI, so for pursuing as well 170 ISO 17025. So the institutionalization and integration of control and monitoring plans of FSRA. So before BPI, BAI have their residue control and monitoring plans. And FDA has a version of its own, FDA annual post-marketing surveillance plans. So us FSRAs are annually preparing this and planning out which um, commodities or um, categories of food we are prioritizing to be sampled to the succeeding year. So as well, we are enhancing our analytical capabilities. So we procure more sophisticated equipment such as GCMSMS, LCMSMS. So with this, we increase more our methods to test for contaminants and even through method validations and proficiency testing. And as well, there are additional plans or additional national and subnational labs in the pipeline. So just for FDA, we have earlier this year, I think earlier this year, yes, there's a groundbreaking of an FDA lab in Central Luzon, particularly in Tarlac. So next slide, please. For emergency response and crisis management. So these are concrete activities that we are doing. Operationalization of the Philippine Rapid Alert System for food and feed, which FDA is the national contact point. So this connects various agency department contact points from within the country and international partners. So we are linking with the WHO, the ASEAN, European Union, and other partner countries. So we have linkages with Australia, New Zealand, US, South Korea, and so on and so forth. So these are sharing information on food and feed safety, and we share it among our network of contact points in the Philippines. So right now, there's an ongoing crafting of the Philippine Food Safety Crisis Management Plan, linking that with the relevant sectoral representation. So covering antimicrobial resistance, zoonosis, international health regulation, environmental health, and radionuclear emergencies, among others. Next. So for stakeholder engagement and communication, so we have these departments actively linking with each other, DA, DOH, FDA, DOST, DTI, and we are conducting educational and advocacy campaigns to improve knowledge and skills of respective stakeholders. So just recently, June 7, we celebrated the World Food Safety Day. And in the coming month, of October, we will be celebrating the Consumer Awareness Month, wherein the last week of October is about food safety awareness. So that week, last week of October is allotted for Food Safety Awareness Week. Okay, so in coordination with ARTA, we have institutionalized the conduct of regulatory impact assessment, public consultations among industry, academia, and consumers. So we are also linking with academic and research institutions for multiplier effect of promoting food safety regulation and education. So over the past years, our Director General has been um, forging memorandum of agreements with uh, academe in terms of improving knowledge on food safety, and as well being a catalyst for MSME development in the locality wherein that academic institution is. So next slide, please. So participation in international food safety activities. So DA, DOH, DOST involvement with ASEAN sectoral bodies on agriculture and food health cluster. So we also attend with WHO, FAO, IPPC, WOA conferences. So hindi naman po kami nagbabiyahe lang. So we attend to these conferences, working groups, international working groups, in order for us to keep abreast with international standards and regulation and apply that to the Philippines. And as well, the Philippines representation in those ones is serves as actually our when we attend, we push our national interest in these conferences or in these meetings that we attend, so that standards, our stakeholders in our country are not disregarded but protected. So as well, we link with international systems. We have, as I mentioned a while ago, WHO Infosan, Rapid Alert System for Food and Feed, and the following GEMS. So these Foscolab and Sifocus. So these are the three systems, GEMS, Foscolab, and Sifocus, are for sharing of food consumption data, exposure assessments on contaminants, chemical, microbiological. So these are global systems sharing food safety data. Next slide, please. So now we go to the challenges and opportunities. So challenges, despite having the Food Safety Act, this is still a persistent challenge, the fragmented implementation across agencies. So we still need to do a lot of work in having overlapping mandates and coordination. So there are still coordination gaps and inconsistency in enforcement. So another one is limited capacity in informal food sectors and MSMEs. So still, especially during the pandemic, many food businesses operate informally, backyard, home-based, and lack access to technical assistance, infrastructure, and thereby they have lower regulatory compliance. So there's a, a need to increase this. So insufficient surveillance and risk profiling. So there's a need for stronger data systems to link and monitor foodborne hazards, foodborne disease outbreaks, antimicrobial resistance, and emerging risks. So there are ongoing efforts for this. So just this morning, I was attending the workshop in creating the National Action Plan for Health Security, where you are seeing the linkages of this topics of hazard, outbreaks, AMR, zoonosis, and other emerging risks. So infrastructure and resource constraints, another challenge, very much persistent. So we still have limited cold chain systems, across the country. So as we here in our presidential pronouncements, they are investing more on this ones because we have very limited cold chain systems. That's why we are seeing um, agri products being dumped because of a lack of storage facilities, so on and so forth. So we still have limited testing laboratories, and we need more competent personnel in food business operators, in our national government agencies, and especially for local government units. So we have our various counterparts there, food safety officers in the agricultural offices, sanitary inspectors, city municipal vets. So we need more competent personnel in our localities. So with this, they hinder effective compliance and enforcement of food safety regulations, especially in rural areas. So we need to invest more on competent personnel. So next, so what are the opportunities that we are seeing? Public-private partnerships. So co-regulation models involving government and industry can improve compliance and innovation, especially through voluntary codes of practice. As well, we are seeing this self-regulation of associations among their members. So we could tap more public-private partnerships in terms of food safety, uh, so that we could maximize resources on both. Next is opportunity on science and technology investment. So DOST and the academies leading initiatives on advancing food safety R&D. So this includes predictive microbiology, packaging hazard studies, and traceability systems. So another opportunity that we are seeing is, especially in this fourth industrial revolution, we are seeing the explosion of information. So digital tools and data platforms. So we have an opportunity to um, develop an integrated food safety web. So maybe an application, an online version. So and as well, we could look at enhancing big data analytics for targeted prioritization of food safety risks and hazards. So we have started studying this big data analytics in food safety, and we are looking at mapping out this information and integrating capacity building. And another opportunity is capacity building and food safety education across sectors. So training programs for food handlers, food business operators, inspectors, food safety officers, and consumers can improve food safety culture and reduce risk. So the topic of food safety culture is actually another big one. I've done some trainings on food safety culture. So, but at the core of the food safety culture is in the trigger of a systematic and sociocultural approach in educating our citizens for assuring safety, not only in industrial level, but on a day-to-day basis, household level. So this must start from being educated at very young age. So in the elementary, high school, and college, so that we have a generational improvement in terms of how we look at food safety. Not only a secondary offshoot, because most industry prioritize profit, but at the forefront must be that food must be safe, nutritious, and accessible for our citizens. So next slide, please. So these are three strategies. So we could do a lot actually, but I have um, prioritized these three strategies or strategic recommendations and way forward. So the first strategy is to further strengthen interagency coordination and governance. So we need to institutionalize more regular coordination mechanisms among departments, DOH, FDA, DA, DTI, LGUs, and BOF, BOC through committees and joint inspections. We can also strengthen the oversight of the Food Safety Regulation Coordinating Board to include strategic planning, monitoring, and evaluation of performance of FSRAs, food safety regulatory agencies. Also, we could promote integrated food safety policies that align mandates and reduce overlap. So we could comply with ARTA, Anti-Red Tape Act, and encourage um, more individuals to invest and become entrepreneurs or MSMEs. So next, scale up capacity building and inclusive support for MSMEs and informal sectors. So we have here and there programs that support uh, technology transfer, technical assistance to MSMEs, but it is better if we could develop joint training programs among departments, including universities, to improve compliance and food safety culture. So we also are seeing this internationally. Creation of we could create localized support hubs in partnership with DTI, DOST, LGUs, and NGOs. So DTI has financing intervention. DOST has the setup project. So technology as technical assistance plus technology transfer. They could be providing the right processing equipment. Uh, will this improves food safety, of course. So the right equipment to be used for certain processing activities. And this must be coordinated with LGUs and NGOs to provide assistance, access to technologies, and financial support. And the last strategy, the next slide, is investing definitely in science, technology, and data-driven food safety systems. So we must advocate definitely for increased financial support to our uh, department that is at the forefront, the OST, and our academic institutions in advancing research and development, which focuses on local needs of stakeholders. So, what are the demands that we are seeing in terms of food safety? Local sources of additives that we could synthesize, generate here in the country. So it could lower the cost. Laboratory reagents, almost all of the laboratory reagents that we are using are imported. So hopefully there could be, push for developing local capacity in providing laboratory reagents in our local labs. So another one is starting of centralization and linkage of food safety database and providing analytics. So possibly we could tap the ICT, PSA, and other data generating institutions. So we could tap academe on this one. So this could be uh, um, a very huge endeavor linking this and maybe using artificial intelligence in the analytics component. And as well, we link national systems to international networks for global data exchange and early warning. So there are international sources. So we could uh, use those when we have limited data at the moment and incorporate that in our risk assessment, risk analysis framework. So yes, next slide, please. And I think that ends my presentation. So I now return to Sir Mark the floor for if our participants have questions.
Opo, sir, maraming salamat po sa isang napakaganda at malawak at malalim na topic for today. So nakita ko dito na sir yung issue pala ng food safety malaki siya. Sumasaklaw siya sa gutom, sa level ng economic status, kahirapan, at pati improvement ng buhay. So ngayon po, we're going to open the floor sa ating pong mga panelists and ating mga attendees. So kung meron po tayong mga questions, you can raise your hand so we can facilitate you live right now. And meron po tayo ngayong 7 katanungan sa ating Q&A. So yung una pong question from our anonymous attendee. Meron daw po bang limit sa join? Ay, sorry, dito. Kasi nakaano ako. Ito po, question po from El Bayrante ng NGAP. So, Mr. Mendoza, is FDA also looking at regulating the content of manufactured goods and being sold food in terms of content such as calorie content, sugar, sodium, and saturated fat content, or level which in the short term may not be seen but is the long-term impact health and wellness, including obesity, hypertension, diabetes. And then the concern is especially true in the case of fast food, canned processed food. And we know that these may not be on malnutrition aspect of Filipino, but more the working class.
Yes, thank you for that question. As I mentioned a while ago, we have mandatory labeling information. So, part po ng required ng FDA on processed food products is declaration of their nutrition content. And it actually undergoes a process of evaluation in FDA. So, nire-require po natin yan ng laboratory analysis, certificates of analysis for the nutrient declaration na kanilang nilalagay sa mga processed food. So in terms of checking, yes, we do. And another recent development that we have done is actually the Department of Health, then FDA followed suit, is on the trans fat regulation. So yung mga partially hydrogenated oils ay banned na po natin because of its role in later on development of cardiovascular diseases. So, isa po yun dun sa mga regulation natin. Now, for sodium, for ano pa po ba yung nabanggit? Teka. Ayan, nabanggit na sodium, sugar, and so on and so forth. So far, wala po tayong syempreng ban po dyan because sugar and sodium are a natural preservatives as well as flavor enhancers. Ang atin pong ginagawang approach dito is more of transparency so that our consumers are informed ano yung content ng product na kanilang i-consume and they are being able to choose whether to buy this product because of ganitong content niya for sugar and sodium. So, mako-compare po ng ating consumers yung nutrient content ng mga products that they are buying and later on consuming.
Okay po. Now, let's go po sa ating pong concern po ni Sir Vincent Jans. So, sir, pwede na po ba siya maka-receive ng slide through email? Ito po
Pwede po
ba
i-convert.
proprietary po ba to? O ito po ba ay pwedeng i-share?
Pwede pong i-share. I-convert ko lang po into PDF.
O, sige po. So, Sir Vincent Jans, ito po sasend po ako sa inyo ng aming email address. Just ano lang po, email lang po kayo sa futureearthphilippines@nas.dust.gov.ph. Doon ko po pwedeng i-attach ang presentation po ni Sir Tim. Now, let's go po sa question po ng ating anonymous attendee. So, risk management are common in financial and other infra-electrical companies. Is the risk manager role also quite established in the food and beverage industry? Are there programs for small and medium enterprises to understand risk management concepts?
Yes po. This is very much ingrained in the food industry as we are adopting the Codex Risk Analysis Framework not only for FDA but also for our colleagues in the Department of Agriculture. Risk management is um, part po talaga ng ating regulation. So, ang meron nga lang po tayong mga counterparts po dito, no? So, kunwari sa amin po, what we are using is the Good Manufacturing Practices and the HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. So, paano po natin ito kinoconnect sa ating small and medium enterprises? So, ang ginagawa po natin dito sa pagdating po sa ating mga inspection activities, we have a guideline and then a checklist that is adopted on the setup or the scale nung kanilang production area. So ito po ay hindi lang limited for those medium and large. So risk management concepts are scalable naman po. So yun, tinitingnan natin yung GMP, HACCP principles when we are doing, our inspectors are doing inspection activities pag pumunta sila sa mga food establishments.
Thank you po, sir. Ngayon po, Sir Tim, bago po ako mapunta dito sa ating four remaining questions, question ko lang po, bilang po eksperto sa nutrition and then bilang po expert din po sa food security, food safety, question ko lang po, sir, bilang po isang ordinaryong mamamayan, ano po yung mga practices po na ginagawa niyo po sa loob po mismo ng inyong bahay to make sure na yung kinukonsum po ng inyong anak, ng inyong asawa, ng inyong tatay, ni Sir Ted, ay naaayon po sa regulation and safety po ng FDA? Ano po yung mga regular po namin na
As
dapat gawin?
consumers,
Exactly
uh,
po.
thank you for that question, no. As a consumer din, no, though tayo ay nagtatrabaho bilang isang food safety officer in the government as a regulator, no, lahat naman po tayo ay consumer. So ako po personally, I'm looking at the sanitation and hygiene. You know, as consumers, we are looking first have to look at the vicinity of the food that we are considering to buy. So is it hygienic? No? Is it hygienic in the sense na malinis ba yung lugar? Malinis ba yung ating nagbebenta ng produkto? We observe for this subtle clues, no? That would indicate a good level of sanitation and hygiene being practiced. Next, kung tayo ay bumibili ng mga processed food product, so ito bang mga processed food product na to are properly labeled, no? So kung hindi sila properly labeled, so these are probably repacked and hindi dumaan sa pagsusuri ni FDA. These are risky products. So we must look at proper labeling, packaging for this food product. So meron tayong mga nakikita sa bangketa, no? Mga processed meat na supposedly they must be frozen, no? Pero wala sila sa refrigeration or freezing temperatures. Nasa bangketa lang. So we must be considering as well the proper storage of this food products that we are considering to buy. Kung um well, yun nga po, no, siguro it must be our to common sense to look for kung siya ay dapat frozen talaga, dapat nasa frozen temperature siya pag binebenta. So kung isa-summarize ko in three, no, look for the proper storage, proper labeling, and proper sanitation and hygiene ng ating pagbibilihan ng mga produktong pampagkain.
So sir, applicable din po ba yung kung hindi ginawa ng nature, wag kainin? And if ever possible, i-consume natin yung mga nabibili sa palengke, sir?
So, binabalanse po natin yun, Sir Mark, no? As a nutritionist, we are promoting variety of food products, no? So, hindi naman po porke hindi siya nagawa ng nature, so it is chemically synthesized, it is unsafe, no? So what am I talking about? So for example, vinegar, if it's not all vinegar are naturally fermented, merong mga chemically synthesized, but chemically speaking, they're the same, no? So ang ating pong pinopromote is variety of food choices, and at the same time, ang kung safety and quality yung titignan natin, dapat dumaan po siya dun sa pag regulate ng mga food safety regulatory agencies. So for karne, for example, National Meat Inspection certified ba yan? So meron yung mga tatak na makikita natin dun sa mga karne, no, na nasa palengke. Ganyan. So kapag tayo naman ay bumibili ng mga processed food, so we look at the completion of the ingredients list. So tayo bilang mga individuals, we have preferences, and looking at the transparency mechanism through the labeling, we could be doing informed choices as consumers. No? So prioritize natin based on our health needs. So we must consider a lot of factors in buying, and yung ating health, yung ating personal preferences, our advocacies, not limiting only to whole foods or not excluding a certain food group.
Salamat, sir. Now, bago po tayo mapunta sa question po natin sa Q&A box, let's proceed first to Sir Cesar. Yes, Sir Cesar, ano pong ating pong question?
Tim, thank you very much for an interesting and detailed presentation. Ano? May 2 to 3 points ako may pagka-related. O baka hindi na-miss out ko sa presentation mo eh. One, we have depleted soils. Sa agriculture, we have depleted soils. This will result in possibly nutrient deficient fruits and veggies. Ano? So what's the status to that? Number two, if you have depleted soils, sa animals naman, baboy, baka, manok, how about the antibiotics in feeds? No? I am told mga kasamayan. Sa isda naman, formalin. Okay, so those three. Depleted soils, antibiotics, and then formalin. Salamat.
Thank you, Dr. Cesar.
No, I'm not.
Mr. Sir Cesar, for that question. So isa nga po 'yan, no, sa mga inaaral, no. Hindi man particular kami sa mga food safety regulatory agency, sa academia, no, yung the interplay of soil health with the nutritional component of produce, agri-produce. So meron nga po mga studies na nagpapakita noon, no, when there is the soil is depleted and so on and so forth. Kaya po bagamat kami sa FDA DOH is on the processed food side, no, the Department of Agriculture promotes the use of good agricultural practices para ma-improve yung soil quality, the safety of the products that are being produced. So these good agricultural practices, ingrained po dito yung mga sustainable practices din eh. So we could be doing proper interventions for soil health management, no? And thereby, no, hopefully hindi na maapektuhan yung nutritional component ng mga agri-produce that are being produced in a particular farm or soil locality. So on the question naman po ng antibiotic use, no? Yun po yung ginagawa ng ating mga colleagues ngayon sa Bureau of Animal Industry, National Meat Inspection Service. And I am also part of that group na pinoform po yung ating tinatawag na National Veterinary Drug Residue Control and Monitoring Plan. So this plan determines what antimicrobials, not limited to antibiotics. So meron kasi tayong mga antifungal, antibactericidal that could still pose residue that could still be considered as residues in food that may contribute dun sa issue of antimicrobial resistance. So ito po is ating yung Department of Agriculture has passed last year, and this year we're doing series of workshop. So gumagawa po tayo ng sampling plans para sa paplano kung gaano karami, which localities, and we could look at the data later on. Ano yung mga lugar na susceptible for this? Ano yung mga farms na merong ganitong residue? And appropriate regulatory actions will be conducted. So ginagawa na po yan ngayon ng ating mga colleagues. No? And kami po sa FDA is actually linked din because meat products are also raw materials in our processing sector. No? Kaya nililink po nila kami doon sa paggawa ng plano na yon. So in terms of the aquaculture naman po, formalin, mas naririnig po natin, mas nakikita po natin actually is on the use of chloramphenicol. So this is antimicrobial din, which is banned. And nade-detect po yan. And before is doing appropriate regulatory actions dito, confiscation and actually controlling. No? May mga checkpoints po na nakikita nila yan. But on recent years, medyo pababa no yung issues natin diyan nung kapag nakakasama natin sila. So hindi na ganun ka-prevalent, but they are still regularly aware and wary of the chloramphenicol issue. But formalin hindi po masyado.
Is Dr. Ted Mendoza your father?
Yes,
Yes,
po.
sir.
Okay, sige.
Ito po Sir Tim, napapanood medyo mainit-init. Ano daw po ba ang role ng FDA doon sa mga videos ng SOCMED and TikTok na kung saan food presentation have questionable practices like not informing the watchers of the label, source of ingredients, just the cooking style, etc. So ito daw po ba is regulated ng FDA and monitored?
Yes, definitely, no. However, kaya po nabanggit ko kanina, no, we need more competent food safety officers. So very limited po. So over the country, we only have around 100 inspectors doing food inspections, no. So NCR, we have less than 20 na food inspectors, and across the region, we have ang tawag namin diyan mga jacks of all trades, no. Hindi sila specific for food, but they are trained to do food safety inspection. So limited yung number po ng ating mga inspectors. But the quality wise, they are very much qualified and competent. Ang problem natin yung limited number, no. So that's why kung makikita natin, no, merong lumalabas sa mga social media na nakaka-capture ng mga processing facility na not following good manufacturing practices and processing under unsanitary and unhygienic environment and conditions. So kapag nakikita po natin yung mga yan, no, FDA is doing investigation, and pwede pong mag-lead yan, no, sa mga legal cases. So tatlo po ang pwede nilang kahinatnan. So administrative, civil, and criminal. So for administrative, so pwede po natin yang ipasara. Pag civil, may mga danyos po yan na babayaran, lalo na kapag merong nakakonsumo ng produkto nila na hospitalized, nagkasakit, na injure, na harm, no? So meron pong civil liabilities that and civil cases that could be passed. And criminal ones, no? If they are producing unregulated or unauthorized food products, pwede natin silang ipakulong. So share ko lang just recently, nito lang, mainit-init pa. Kakarating ko lang. Galing po ako sa isang court hearing, no, ng yun nga po, sila po ay nagbebenta ng mga unauthorized, no, processed food products. And ang kanila pong kakaharapin kung sakasakali is 1 to 6 years, if I'm not mistaken, na pagkakakulong for selling this unauthorized food products. So, yun po yung ating mga ginagawa sa FDA, no? Hindi naman po limitado lang si FDA dito. Nakikipagtulungan din po tayo sa mga counterparts natin sa local government units and even our law enforcement agencies, no? Just this year alone, no? Halos 10 na po yung court hearing na na-attendan ko, and meron na po tayong hindi naman po ako, no, yung nagsampa po ng kaso ng mga pulis, no. May mga napakulong na po sila doon. But FDA technically on the administrative side, inspection, investigation, yun po yung expertise and what we are regularly doing. Hindi lang po kami maingay, no, pagpasensya na po. At we are working silently, but definitely we are working on this, no.
Tama po yun, sir, lalo sa panahon na to na sobrang lakas ng impluwensya sa social media. Kahit anong ipakita doon, gagayahin ng kabataan, gagayahin ng general population. Kaya ang ending ngayon, as early as mga kabataan pa lang, meron na pong chronic kidney disease. Alam po natin yan.
Oo.
Now, let's proceed po, sir, dito po sa question po dito po kay Sir Bayrante. Ano daw po ang inyong concern o ito po ba isaklaw po ninyo? Yung pong nanoplastic contamination, ito daw po ba ay under pa din po ng FDA?
Nanoplastic na, no? Dati microplastic lang yung pinag-uusapan. Sa ngayon, no, we are awaiting actually a higher level guidance on this from the Department of Health and even the World Health Organization. So internationally, these are being discussed, but wala pa kasing pong consensus, no. So please bear with us as regulators. We are waiting for sufficient scientific evidences on this. But we are aware definitely about this. And kapag dumating po yung sufficient scientific evidence na makukuha natin regarding micro and even nanoplastics, meron po dapat na regulasyon na ma-issue or polisiya na ma-issue ang aming opisina.
Okay po. Galing naman po kay Mr. Francis Elegado ng Biotech UPLB. Meron daw po mga report na yun daw po mga probiotics in the market ay kontaminado. So, yun daw po bang FDA regulation and probiotic ay noong pa daw po 2004. So, will it be updated just like other countries to strictly label these products such as strains and functional specificity?
Ang atin pong overarching policy in FDA is on transparency, no? And so every product, no, as much as possible is as specific as possible yung kanyang declaration, especially on the nature of food. So with regards to the 2004 probiotics standard po yan, no? Meron lang pong limited number of strains that are included there. And with that limitation, sinusupplement po yan, sir, ng Codex Alimentarius Standard. So kung makikita nyo po, pababasa nyo yung provision sa Food Safety Act, no, na kapag whereas national regulation standards or policies are limited, we could adopt the Codex Alimentarius Standard para maging abreast siya with more current and internationally accepted na mga standards and regulation. So yun po yung approach na ginagawa namin with FDA.
Ito po, sir. Second to the last question. Sir, ito po, concern po ako dito gawa ng aking pong mga pamangkin. So, alam po natin ngayon, sir, usok-uso yung mga Korean noodles na napaka-anghang, napaka-alat. So, aside from smart consumption ng mga consumers, ano po yung step na ginagawa ng FDA para po masawata o kaya makontrol o kaya ma-regulate itong issue na to?
On the consumption side po, ang katuwang po talaga dyan is National Nutrition Council, no? So sila po yung gumagawa ng mga pulisiya patungkol sa balanced diet, healthy choices in consumption, and nutritional content, no? So si National Nutrition Council, ang interaction po ni FDA with the NNC is once the NNC passed resolution, FDA will adopt into a technical regulation and then FDA could in implement, no. So yung po kasi ang interplay with policymakers and regulators, no. So the regulators could only uh, implement when there are policies in place and regulation. So isa rin po 'yan sa tenets of good regulatory practices, no. So in answering the question, yung pong actually pag-consume ng huge quantities of let's say yung nabanggit po ni Sir Mark, yung Korean noodles, no. Hindi po pwedeng i-regulate ni FDA yung quantity and the volume. Ang magagawa lang po ni FDA is ma-assure that these products are safe, quality, and they are complete in declaring mandatory labeling declarations, no. So kumpleto yung mga kanilang informasyon na dinedeclare so that our consumers will be well informed in their choices. So when they consume a lot of this, no, maganda po na as a nutritionist, no, talagang we as consumers, as individuals, pag-aralan din natin ano ba ang tamang balanse ng ating diet, no. So pwede po nating tignan yung guidance na binibigay ng NNC patungkol dyan, and even si DOST FNRI, Food Nutrition Research Institute. So meron tayong pinggang Pinoy na tinatawag. Dati nung lumalaki po tayo, food pyramid po yan. Ngayon ang uso na is pinggang Pinoy. So makikita natin yung bahagdan ng nutrient distribution in terms of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Tapos, ima-match pa natin po yan dun sa kanilang release na 10 commandments, no? So, dun talaga in-espouse natin what are the need po na as individual na uh, principles na ating isabuhay araw-araw. So, a variety of food that is being consumed. We look for the proper nutrient-dense food. Iwasan natin yung mga high sodium, high fat, na high sugar food products, reduction of trans fat consumption, and so on and so forth. So, ima-match po natin yun, no? So, kaya challenge po talaga sa gobyerno na um, aside from food safety, no, tumatawid na tayo sa nutrition. Pero magkatuwang po kasi ang concept of food safety and nutrition. So aside from consuming safe food products, we must be consuming nutritious products as well. Kasi kahit safe po yan, no, in the long run, yung atin pong health through the consumption of, let's say, um, um, under or hindi ganoon ka nutritious, hindi ganoon ka nutrient dense, is non-communicable diseases naman down the line yung ating makukuha.
Tama po yan, sir. So, 9 minutes na lang at 5:30 na. So, overtime na po tayo. So, pahuling salita lang po galing po sa ating project manager, si NS Cruz. Ma'am, meron po kayong gustong sabihin? Meron po kayong gustong i-share? Okay. So, sa ating po
Maraming salamat. No, Timothy Mendoza, and so mabuti kayong si Ted Mendoza, magkatuwang kayo ng advocacy rin dahil dyan sa food security and issues ng mga sa agrikultura naman yun, kasama rin yan ng ating pag-aalaga ng ating pagkain dapat kinakain. And thank you for giving a very comprehensive coverage, discussion of the issues. Sabi nga of the issues sa food safety, sabi nga napakalawak pala ng coverage nito. At mahirap lahat nating siguro mahirap para very tough, very challenging yung job ng ninyo kayong mga nasa food safety ngayon. And tama na kailangan mas marami ang mga food inspectors natin dito sa bayan.
Thank you po, Ma'am Luli.
Maraming salamat sa lahat.
So sa topic po natin ngayon, nakita po natin na ang issue po ng food safety ay sumaklaw sa SDG 1, 3, 6, 2, 9, 12 hanggang 17. So napakalawak nga po, sabi nga po ni Ma'am, napakalawak po na aspeto ang sinasaklawan o sinasalamin ng issue ng food safety. So bilang po consumers, karapatan po natin at obligasyon po natin na mag-consume ng tama, mag-consume ng malinis na pagkain, upang matulungan din po nating iangat ang ating level sa kabuhayan, sa edukasyon, sa kahirapan, malnutrisyon. So ngayon pong hapon, tayo pong lahat ay magdi-dinner. So siguraduhin po natin na nakinig po tayo kay Sir Timothy at kumain po tayo ng masustansya at masarap na pagkain. So have a great weekend and see you again next week.